International Trade. We will spend the first hour and a half with witnesses and the last half hour to consider a motion placed last week. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, February 6, 2024, the committee is resuming a study of the CBSA Assessment and Revenue Management System, referred to as CARM. We have with us today the Canadian Association of Importers and Exporters, Kim Campbell. Welcome back. Canadian Society of Customs Brokers, Candace Sider, Vice Chair, Board of Directors. From Deloitte, we have Louise Upton, partner by video conference. And the other partner, Matthew Day, is unable to attend today because his headset did not arrive in time. So we just have Louise with us today. And from Federal Express Canada Limited, we have Renee Gelbert, Managing Director, Regulatory Affairs by Video Conference. And Optimo Customs Inc., Barb Miller, President. And from UPS Canada, we have Tammy Bilodeau, Vice President, Customs Brokerage and Compliance. Welcome all. We will, as agreed previously, we'll forego opening remarks and immediately go into rounds of questions. Starting with Mr. Baldinelli, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the witnesses for being with us this afternoon and appearing and answering our questions. I've got some concerns. We're getting close to the blackout period, which is October 4th. And once we're there, this notion called the Big Bang is in effect. But I want to go to Ms. Upton, if I could, right away. Ms. Upton, in our previous hearing, we had Mr. Gallivan from CBSA, and I mean, he wouldn't right out come and describe, I call it more verbal gymnastics, on the whole question of the ownership of CARM. So does Deloitte own CARM, the portal, yes or no?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I can tell you is that CARM is a solution developed on a platform by Deloitte. CBSA has exclusive licensing rights to the platform and owns the IP rights to any CARM-specific elements.
Thank you. Now, in terms of going into the blackout period, now, are Deloitte staff assisting CBSA, and if you can indicate to us, if so, how many staff are being allocated to assist with this?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Deloitte staff is there as the technical support, so supporting the solution from a technical perspective. There are approximately 150 to 170 people that are available to provide that support during the cutover and go live period.
So that would be after the blackout period. So once you go live, there's up to 100. If you could repeat that number again, of Deloitte staff that could be allocated to work on this.
During and after, so during the cutover period and after the go live period, there are up to between 150 to 170 staff that could be allocated, depending on volume and issues that could arise, that can be allocated to that support.
Now, would that be the cost that would be incurred? That's in addition to the, what I believe, up to $123 million that's been allocated so far to Deloitte for this project?
That cost is included in the overall contract as it was defined at the beginning of the project. So the support and the cutover is part of the original contracting.
Thank you. I'm going to go over to Ms. Campbell now, and I just want to get her comments on a letter that we received on October 1st from Mr. Gallivan. It's almost the same example as Mr. Weber when he was here the other day, indicating just before his appearance, CBSA provided some additional information and additional clarification on aspects. Ms. Campbell, in the letter on page 2, Mr. Gallivan talks to the fact that you had mentioned 40 companies have been allowed to test CARM. In fact, he mentions about 73 companies participated in the first exercise, and you were just off by 4 because it's now currently 44 companies. Why was that number reduced?
First of all, I'm not familiar with that that letter, so thank you for providing me that information. I would say that a couple things, and just to refer members back to my written statement that I did provide, I did say about 100 companies. I think what we're getting tied up in here is who is allowed to test. And so first round, we actually had 75 entities, and then second round, they moved it down to 40.
Now, they also talk about having the help desk and 4-hour help desk processing times. Now, my understanding, that's only for perishables and emergency situations. But, I mean, from that 44 testers, I'm hearing there's still unresolved tickets that the government can't resolve in a timely manner. So if they can't resolve the tickets from 44 testers, how are they going to do it for 90,000 plus people that are registered for the system?
We agree, and I think there's a couple things to unbundle there. First of all, again, I'll just restate, we think there's 200,000 people. So again, let's just say it's 100. We'll give Mr. Galvin the benefit of the doubt on that number. That's still just under 200,000 people that will be seeing it for the first time. So there's going to be a lot of questions just about how to get in and use it. Then there's the piece of it, what you're referring to is the ticketing. That's around the systems issues. Then there's the third part, which is the help desk. And the help desk is really where a lot of that stuff is facilitated in terms of business number. So there's various aspects that you would have to figure out, one, to negotiate, who to go to, and they all have various levels of responses.
That doesn't even talk about the reconciliation. If that's requested as part of a ticket, that could take months, and it's a simple cut and paste. We spent $500 million on creating a system, and yet a CBSA officer would simply have to go in there and cut and paste, and I find that kind of ludicrous. It's kind of IT 101 for dummies. I might as well just say turn it off and reboot. I mean, it's crazy. But you have raised a concern, and this is important too. About data security for CARM, and have indicated, says CARM data resides on a third-party server. Can you go further on that and explain some of your concerns?
Yeah, well, we do believe that it is sitting in an unprotected cloud server environment. Like, we don't dispute cloud is a good way to go, but where it is in our protected B status, in conjunction with the fact we do have an agreement with the U.S. on sharing export data, we're very, very concerned that that data is not being properly protected and managed by the government.
Mr. Sidhu, please. 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to our witnesses for being here today. You know, the CARM project, as many of you are aware, has been in the works for, probably over a decade now through different governments. And it's an important program that will help increase government revenues, transparency, modernize the system, and, of course, add some functionalities. And so today I think it's important why we're bringing CARM forward. It's important for those that are watching at home, but it's also important for us to understand what are some of the procedures in place to help importers and trade facilitators to help ensure that trade goes without any issues come the blackout date. And I had a question in regards to the ticketing system. Maybe some examples from you guys when you filed tickets. Is it a complex situation? Is it a simple fix? How long does that traditionally take? Maybe some feedback from you. I can start with Ms. Slider.
Sure. Thank you for that question. They could be complex or they could be very simple. They're all managed through the same ticketing system. So a ticket is submitted to CBSA, and the response that comes back is that they will respond within 2 to 10 business days, depending on the severity of the financial issue. So if it's an issue that's related to the back end, accounts receivable ledger, it could conceivably take up to 10 days to resolve. What we've seen historically is it's a number of days. In some cases, it's been weeks to resolve the tickets. They could be subjects in terms of order and councils that are not calculating properly, excise tax that is not calculating properly. There's just a number of different issues that all could present themselves in the way in terms of how we manage those tickets.
Ms. Slider, I know you're here for the Canadian Society of Custom Brokers, but you also work for probably one of the largest custom brokers in North America. And so I guess based on volume, you speak with that experience. Ms. Miller, maybe we can add some context to this.
I think the key thing to establish is that there's 2 support desks that would come into RISE if there's issues with the system. So with the CARM system, it is a back-end system. If there's an issue with release, if there's an issue with something that you can't finalize and it could be system, you would actually call a different number on that aspect and probably get a quicker resolve. So putting them into the same bucket is not realistic. Understanding that there is a significant difference between the front end and the back end, and CARM is 100% a back end system.
So for an OIC, as we heard from Ms. Sider, when you would call CBSA instead of filing a ticket?
100%. I would not log a CARM ticket.
And how
for
quick
that.
is the response time that you're getting?
2 hours approximately, depending on what time of day you're calling, but typically approximately 2 hours response time.
Okay, so I'm just trying to.
Add some more information because our members are certainly not reporting that
Sure,
turnaround
sure,
time.
Ms.
So
Campbell.
Barb's 100% right. There's the ticketing system around systems issues, but then there's the help desk. Maybe Barb, maybe there's a different number. This is part of our challenge. We are still looking for processes on what to do. So the rigor is right now, you can either call the help desk, you wait quite a long time for somebody to answer, then you're given a ticket, and then they tell you, we will get back to you in a few days or a day. Then you get another response to say, this is the day we're going to talk to you about this issue at the help desk. And then the other way is you can fill out a form, and you're going to get the same behavior. You'll get an acknowledgement, and then it will be days before you actually get a response, with followed up with a set time appointment. So our members are not reporting that same turnaround time.
So it's to my understanding that the resources are being put and already there behind this help desk. As you know, when any new system launches, there's always kinks to be worked out, and we heard that 99% of the time, it's fine. The 1% is kind of the focus that CBSA is putting the resources behind to help resolve, and so it's good to hear about the help desk and how we can further streamline some of the issues that you might foresee. Not to say they won't be there, but I was also talking to some stakeholders in regards to registration for importers during the blackout period. And for those watching at home, I think the blackout period starts this Friday, and it goes until October the 20th? Is that the 21st? And so I was told during the blackout period that you cannot register an import number. So if you're a new business and you want to import into Canada, you cannot register an import number during that period of time. But there is a customs notice out, 24-29, that says new commercial importers, including non-resident importers requiring a business number and an importer account number, are able to obtain release for their importation of commercial goods and continue working with CRA to obtain a BN, and the CBSA can obtain the RM account number for their import activities via the interim process established in May 2024. Can you tell me about this interim process that was established since May, maybe even Sider?
Again, this is one our
Or Ms.
understanding
Miller?
is-
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the key thing to recognize is that there was a significant change to the import process when Customs Notice 2418 came out, where they eliminated the broker support line that helped us register people. But the registration process is not a CBSA issue, it's a CRA issue. So if you have a new importer or a new company, there's still that process where they have to register with CRA. If they are trying to get an import number or an import business number turned on, that process was rectified and communicated. Possibly not the greatest, but when that customs notice came out in May, and there is services where we can actually report in, get that set up. It is delaying, pardon?
What does that process look like really
The
quickly?
process means that we would take that same documentation and we would send it into that desk help, which is currently where we would send in our broker tickets for registration, and that we would send it in. We would wait for a response. Typically, they'll tell you if it's a Canadian company, we would get a response to turn on a business number that is already registered. As a company in Canada, we would have a response time typically within a day to date. If it's a non-resident who is not registered in Canada, the wait time for that business number already is anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, and that was pre-CARM.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 6 minutes, please.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all our witnesses today. It was mentioned earlier by my colleague. We received a letter from CBSA that disagreed with some of the testimony we received last year. Ms. Campbell, you were able to respond to some of what was stated in this letter. I'd like to ask a question to Ms. Bilodeau from UPS, who is with us online, I believe, if I'm correct. Yes. So what is mentioned in the letter? It says the committee heard testimony that said that the CBSA's ability to reply to tickets within 24 hours was not respected. Ms. Bilodeau from UPS said that certain members did not receive an answer for several days. They stated that 85% of emergency requests were treated within 24 hours. More than 35,000 requests were received during that time. And CBSA received a 500% increase in its volume of requests during that time. So this testimony does not take into account the fact that some clients may have stopped activity and they may be registered with another company. Ms. Bilodeau, would you like to respond to the fact that they disagree with your testimony?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't speak to the government's number of calls that they're receiving. I certainly can't attest or decline what they're reporting. I can only report on our experience as an organization. And as I indicated in my last testimony, it's not been our experience that we've received response back within 24 hours on tickets that have been opened by our organization as we were going through the registration and the testing process. That being said, I also testified to the fact that, UPS has diligently worked with our customers. We've done considerable outreach to our customers to try to get them onboarded. We obviously are invested in this process being successful as well. The unfortunate thing is that in order for the success of CARM implementation, it's predicated on adoption of all commercial importers, as we know. And the fact of the matter, in the case of UPS and some of our counterparts, we have far less than 50% of our customers who have registered on the CARM client portal. As I testified for UPS specifically, that's 20%. These are typically small importers. They import infrequently, but they are active importers that have imported with UPS over the last 12 months. So I stand by the fact that my concern is predicated around the fact that we have a low adoption rate of our customer base. And obviously, I'm invested in ensuring that our customers aren't negatively impacted, not only upon implementation, but after the transitionary measures have elapsed. So we do appreciate the transitionary measures, but those will only be in effect for 180 days and 12 months respectively. So that's my concern.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Ms. Bilodeau. Ms. Campbell, you sent us a letter in which you, on behalf of your association, called for the process be done under the oversight of a third party. Could you develop on that?
Yes, please. Thank you for that question, Madam Chair. We really feel that this is imperative as we move forward. We have learned even when we got a delay, nothing changed. And we also can see from, just hearing a little bit of what was sent to the committee through letter through Mr. Gallivan, it's still become a he said, she said scenario. And we really need somebody that can come to the table and, like we discussed, provide a framework for successful implementation. And so for us, even if we got the delay that we are obviously been talking about, we still need this entity or person to get us together to the table and agree on a framework that we can all move forward into a successful implementation.
Oui, parce que bien sûr, comme on en avait parlé.
Yes, because of course, as we said last time, I don't know if it was with you or with a colleague who had similar concerns to you, but you said, concerning the report that months later, we can always look back and know what's best to do. We shouldn't walk into a wall if we can see the wall. But since the month of April, when they announced the report, it seems that we're still at step one and they haven't done enough. So this is why we need a third party. In your opinion, this is what we need, correct?
We're maybe a little bit past step one because we've talked a little bit about we have moved forward on the further ahead on the certification pieces, which is great. Where this challenge still is, a lot of those software guys have just got their products developed. And same with, there's quite a few people here that can testify. They have an integrated solution. In other words, they're creating their own solution. But again, all the testing, the interfacing, my importing clients are behind the 8 ball because they can't get things implemented. So it's all those other reasons. I would say we're further along, but still not where we would like to be by far.
Thank you very much. Sorry, there's 2 seconds remaining. Mr. Cannings, please.
Okay, thank you for coming back before us today. There's a lot to try to unpack here. I'd like to, I think, start with Ms. Bilodeau. Just you were talking about the infrequent clients, the smaller clients that are, regularly importing material, but not doing it very often. So maybe they're not as invested in, getting the training or getting not just the training, but actually getting registered. Can you talk about how they would be negatively impacted? If they, a couple of months from now, they want to import something and they still haven't done that piece. What's the process like for them? I understand this is kind of a back-end thing. They can get their product into Canada. I assume it's the calculation of the tariffs and fees after that. Can you just describe what the process for them would be if they're trying to do everything at once?
Okay, so I'll start by just recapping on the transitionary measures that have been put in place. As we've said, we're certainly appreciative of. So CARM requires all commercial importers to register in the CARM client portal. They have to have their own business number in order to do so. They need to post a security bond or a cash deposit in order to import goods and have them released without paying at the border. And they have to delegate authority to their customs broker. During the transitionary period of 180 days, CBSA has waived the requirement for them to have the bond or the cash deposit. But after 180 days, without that cash deposit or security bond on file with CBSA, they would have to pay at the time of importation. So at the time the shipment reaches the border, they'll no longer be able to obtain release of their goods otherwise. With respect to the business number, it's similar, but that transition period is for 1 year, whereby it allows the broker, a customs broker, to use our business number in order to facilitate the release and the accounting of goods so that we can ensure there aren't any customs penalties as a result of late filing. So those requirements will become problematic, in my opinion, for those customers small businesses who don't want to tie up cash with respect to posting of the bond and can no longer use their broker's bond. And we see several hundreds, maybe thousands across the industry, and Michelle Bear can probably attest to this from an express carrier perspective, customers that arrive at the border without a customs broker at the time of import. Currently today, we facilitate that clearance process for them, either on their business number, on our business number, definitely on our bond, and we ensure that the duties and taxes are paid to CBSA and take the financial risk on ourselves to bill them after the fact. So those are all the things that will change after the transitionary measures that we've, raised concerns about, not about the implementation of CARM as an accounting portal per se, but as a requirement to register. The express carriers feel if we could decouple the requirement for businesses to register and make it an opt-in program, we could comply with the accounting requirements, the back-end duty and tax facilitation as an industry. And that would make for a much more simplified process.
So just to be clear then, so your main concern is more that decoupling. It's not so much about training or things like that. It's about how the new system will work.
Yeah, it's about the additional complications for those small businesses that are not experts in trade compliance and the complexity that that's going to add to their business, which I think is going to basically impede trade. They're not going to be interested in importing into Canada if it becomes too complex.
And quickly, if we delayed the whole thing another 6 months, that wouldn't necessarily address those concerns. I mean, because we have a 6-month transition period anyways for...
A delay in and of itself will not change those facts.
44 seconds. Okay. Anybody here that would like to comment on that? Yes.
I think the important thing to establish here is there's a significant difference between having you delegated on the portal and having an importer registered. So as mentioned, an importer can be registered and not delegate a service provider, which means that that service provider would not know that they were registered or not. To presume that every person who has had one clearance with a courier is a small business is not realistic. There is many importers out there that utilize a courier only for small shipments, not the others. So myself, I have set up most likely close to 300 importers, and every single one of them will ask for delegation from the couriers of that, and if they don't use them, we decline that registration. Okay. So it's not realistic to believe that if they aren't on the portal, you were delegated. They have that option, and the portal belongs to an importer, and they have that right. So it's just not realistic.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Cannings. Mr. Martel, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Campbell, microphone, please. How did CBSA take into account your concerns concerning the launch?
I'm assuming you're referring to the last launch because we've been attempting to launch since 2021. Although we're talking about recent delays, we've actually had delays since 2021. So typically the response is not let's roll up our sleeves and figure it out. It's very prescriptive and not very, we don't get to collaborate in a meaningful way to move us all forward.
What's your evaluation of the CARM launch risks?
I think the one thing I want to start by saying is this is a sad day for all of us to be here, no matter what happens. We're all very passionate people that want to make our borders go through. I can say our members have done a survey with our members. 80% of our members don't feel they're ready, and we're asking for a delay. 20% did not support that. They're ready to go. When you actually unbundle that, most people that want to go, they've invested a lot of time and energy. We're all exhausted. We just kind of want to rip the Band-Aid off and see what happens. And so that's part of the risk. Are we ready? Not sure. We think there's a lot of uncertainty and scary things on the other side. We don't know some of that until we do it. But just even talking about the portal experience, there's so many people that can't even get into it. We had a great conversation with some of our colleagues from CFIB yesterday. A lot of those members are still struggling. So, and we know that some of other like-minded associations have sent in letters. So generally, everyone is telling the same thing. We're not ready.
Concernant le niveau de formation.
Concerning the amount of training that you received on the system, do you have concerns with this?
Probably I'll defer to some of my other colleagues here because I feel like the folks that have been allowed to lean in through the CES testing are, they've had, again, a competitive advantage over the rest of us that haven't. I can speak to you from my perspective and just what we're hearing from members. Members are feeling very stressed. This is my volunteer job. My full-time paid job is a customs broker. I work with a very well-known service provider that provides software. We're all struggling right now. They're struggling to try and train us. Then we're trying to struggle to deal with our staff and then try and educate our clients. So that's kind of the state of affairs right now. But others could certainly weigh in if they have a different perspective.
Madame Campbell, est-ce que vous pensez...
Ms. Campbell, Do you think that the rollout schedule of CARM is realistic, given the challenges that you have been facing up to date?
I wouldn't say it's not unrealistic. The approach is unrealistic. We really have been, and we put that in our submission, we've been talking about this in May. It's the Big Bang approach that really is problematic. And we were very supportive of Mr. Galvin when he stated in his presentation to the committee in the early part of the year that those are ready to go can go. So we, again, want to say we support that approach. That's the approach we should be taking. Those that are ready to go should be able to go, and the rest should be able to come on as we figure out the system, make sure it's stabilized, all those things. So that is still what we would continue to say at this point.
Combien? 1 minute 20 seconds. Oui. Alors, si je comprends bien.
So if I've understood correctly, you believe that you're ready for the CARM launch?
I will have to be ready if I'm forced to be ready. And so will all of our members. The ramifications, we don't know, but obviously we might have no other option at this point based on what CBSA continues to say.
Merci.
Mr. Sheehan, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and again, welcome back. It's a very important discussion. I represent Sault Ste. Marie, the riding thereof, so Sault Ste. Marie and surrounding area, and it's a border crossing town. So, we know that folks come into the Sault with their stuff from the bridge. They come through water. There are ports. Comes through train. And it comes through, a whole bunch of other things like airlines. And so it's a lot of trade comes through these border towns in across Canada. And Sault Ste. Marie is one of them. So my background was in business and economic development. I had my own little business and also did a bunch of trade missions for the local economic development corporation. So I know a lot of the folks that are working in your area. And one of the things that I noted when I was thinking about this whole CARMS thing was the whole process about the integration of IT into our systems. Because I've seen it way back before. I went to school over at Lake Superior State University in Sault, Michigan. And, people would come across and the paperwork would be horrendous. And people would be there for a very, very long time trying to get their stuff through. They bring their custom brokers in and continue to do it. So through time, I worked for the first commerce-enabled website in Northern Ontario, and at that time, you saw people trying to get into IT, but you saw some resistance for a variety of reasons because of complicated things. Sometimes there were bugs in the system, but sometimes it was an education and training thing that Richard kind of alluded to earlier. So one of the things that I really am trying to understand right now, as businesses now have started to change and now have IT platforms, now have systems in place to expedite the processes. My first question, I think, will be to Deloitte, just to sort of, because we're getting towards the 11th hour to Deloitte. What are the consequences if we delay the launch of CARMS for 6 months? And I believe they're online, if you don't mind answering that question.
We are. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the question, and I think it's an important one. The system itself has continued to be tested. We've run several mock conversions. We've run several preparations for go live in terms of cutover. And I think what's really important here is that we are replacing a 30-plus-year-old accounting system within the Government of Canada, a system that by their own admission is ready and in desperate need of replacement. And if I understand correctly, has had challenges even as early as this morning. That system is down and continues to be a challenge. So continuing to delay, I believe, will continue to cause undue stress on this particular system. In having done this work for over 30 years of implementation, and I think I heard you say it's not uncommon to have some trepidation. It's not uncommon for things to not maybe feel like everybody's 100% ready. But what I've seen with clients in this particular case is at some point, it's important to actually move forward and the response that you have in terms of supporting the system once it is live, the ability to bring in the right resources to provide that support is equally important. And that's where I feel we've continued to prepare and make sure that the CARM solution is ready for go live.
You're known to be good with the numbers. What would the cost be to the taxpayer for a 6-month delay? You didn't speak about any costs about a delay for 6 months.
Yeah, I can't speak to the overall cost just because I'm not fully aware of all of the costs within CBSA. But what I can say is historically, what we've seen is a 6-month delay is anywhere from potentially, 20 to 30 million. It would be like a ballpark number, I guess I could give you at this point.
About 30 million. Thank you very much. And
20 seconds remaining.
I was just going to ask, the contract that you have with CBSA, would it allow for a 6-month delay at this time?
There would be conversations we would need to have around Deloitte's role during that 6-month delay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Alors, tout d'abord,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I just wanted to mention, pertaining to the request that was sent to us by importers and exporters, there's a motion on the table to request a delay. I'm also adding an amendment to this to add the intervention of a third party. If this is passed, this will be a part of the committee's recommendation to the House. My question will now be for the Canadian Society of Customs Brokers, Ms. Sider. We received your submission. Unfortunately, we didn't have it in French. I'd ask if you could kindly send it in French as well next time. You mentioned that your members have said that about 70% of them would be in favor of deferring the rollout to April 2025, and that your relations with CBSA have deteriorated recently. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. That's a great question. Prior to the last, I wanted to say 12 to 18 months, trade chain partners met on a regular monthly basis with CBSA. And it was to bring us all to the same table, to have the same conversations, the same discussions, listen to the concerns from the trade community and arrive at resolutions so that we could position ourselves to go forward. It's unfortunate, but the relationship with CBSA and the communication with external trade has really eroded. There's been very little communication. And while CBSA has attested to a different kind of communication strategy in terms of bringing together smaller groups and having those candid discussions, the challenge with that is very isolated. So now you're having meetings in silos, you're discussing certain issues with certain parties, and it's not communicated more broadly right across all trade chain partners. So that definitely has led to a source of frustration. We're all in this together. I mean, we've always said from the beginning, it's been a long modernization project, and we're here to support the agency, but we also need that two-way communication. It's critical for us in terms of going live. And while, from our membership position, 60% would like it to be extended, that really is because of the unintended consequences of what we don't know is around the corner. So we can start our cutover period. We really won't know until we come back up live on the 21st. And to go through a period of a 16-day outage is unheard of in industry. We're not aware of any government that is down for a 16-day period that precludes us from the ability to actually invoice importers and being able to manage those payments to the agency, which is one of the very, kind of impetus of why we were moving to CARM, for some assurance in terms of payment to the Receiver General of Canada and move away from custom brokers.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cannings for 2.5 minutes, please.
Okay, maybe I'll go back to Deloitte, Ms. Upton, and if you could just perhaps tell me why we need this blackout period, why we don't have any options going forward for people to register or not right away, so that we could have a more graduated start to this whole program. It seems that some of the real concerns aren't so much the training, et cetera. It's this sort of big bang way of going about things. Why was that chosen, and why can't we fix that right now? Why can't we change it?
Yep. Maybe I'll take it from a couple different perspectives to kind of provide some context. As I mentioned earlier, the system itself that we're replacing is over 30 years old. And so the complications with that system and looking at trying to run things in parallel, making changes to that system and keeping things in sync were conversations that happened early on in the process. And to my understanding, I was not part of those conversations, were deemed to be not feasible because of the complexities of the aging system and the technologies that were there. The other piece of it is the solution itself is being rolled out in a series of different releases. This is probably release 5, 6, or 7 of this solution. So it's not that we haven't thought through how to roll it out more thoughtfully. We started back in release 0. We had to release R2, what we've called R2 affectionately, internally at CBSA. We're moving to R3. So there's been ongoing releases throughout that life cycle of the program. In terms of the 16-day blackout period, I think what's important to remember here is we are actually migrating 6.7 billion records. So transactions, historical transactions that need to be there for the CBSA to do any sort of reconciliation, to do any sort of history of those transactions as they move forward. That is not a small number of volume. That's a very big volume. And that is partly what requires the amount of time of the blackout period. The other component of that is we have left ourselves some time in there to make sure that we have some contingency so that we have time within that blackout period if something unforeseen should happen. In my years of doing this, I have seen all kinds of unforeseen things happen. Anything from the city taking the power down to a fire in the building. We can't plan for the things that we don't know. And so that's why we've also left ourselves some contingency in that time frame.
Thank you very much. Mr. Genero for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everybody, for being here yet again to look into this. We're 31 hours away from the blackout period. I've never seen anything like this in my nearly 10 years of being here. That this is right down to the wire, and it's the individuals that are being impacted by this don't have the confidence that this is going forward in a way that they're comfortable with and that helps them do business. We've already seen Arrive scam. We've seen the Phoenix Pay system from this government. I can't say I have any confidence either on where this is going. I guess my first question that I'll ask is to you, Ms. Upton, again, back at this committee. Have you been asked by CBSA to consider the possibility of a delay?
The conversations that we've had to date have been about moving forward and focusing on the cutover, which begins on October 4th.
Has there been any conversations with you about a possible delay?
The conversations have been focused on the cutover at this stage.
I understand that you've talked about the cutover, but have you discussed a possible delay of the October 1st, 21st date?
As I said, the conversations that I have been involved in have been solely focused on the cutover at this stage.
It's okay to say no. Is the answer no? You have not discussed a possible delay?
I have
October 21st?
not been part of conversations other than those about moving forward with the cutover.
You personally, or Deloitte has not been part of any
Me
conversations?
personally, as well as Deloitte.
So there's no plan October 21st moving forward. There's been no discussion that possibly, if there is a delay, you've already indicated a $30 million cost. I assume that there must be some sort of conversation that's happening on your end that what if there is a delay? You're saying that no, there has been no discussion about that whatsoever. That's your testimony here today.
The conversations have been focused on putting the cutover plan into place and on supporting the application. What do we need to do to be able to support this application once it is live? That has been the focus.
I get that's the focus, Ms. Upton, but I'm curious as if there has been a conversation, because that's important, I think, for this committee to know, that if the government is discussing the possibility of what would happen if we do delay, then again, I think everybody in this room, that's important information for us to know. So is your testimony that there has been no conversation that's happened at all with Deloitte about possibly delaying the October 21st start date?
As I said, the conversations with Deloitte have been focused on getting to the cutover and supporting the application once it is live.
I understand the focus, but again, the question was if there has been that conversation. The focus and a simple yes or no answer is a completely different response. Let's get to what happens. What's Deloitte's role as of October 4th?
To continue to support CBSA in the actual conversion of the technology. So we have a 2,000 plus line plan of activities that need to happen during the cutover, which are minute by minute, in some cases second by second activities that need to happen in sequential order. We work with the CBSA to execute and deliver on those. And then once the system is live on October 21st, as I mentioned earlier, is to support from a technology perspective the CBSA in the launch of the application.
Are you satisfied that October 21st will be a success?
All of our testing, all of our planning.
I have another follow-up question, so hoping you just answer yes or no. Are you satisfied October 21st will be a success?
I believe that we are ready to launch and go live on October 21st.
Thank you very much. On to Ms. Fortier, please, for 5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Alors,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we've been talking about this for a long time, and this all began with the last Harper government. This transformation had already begun, and here we are today. As my colleague said, it's been a long time. We're at the 11th hour, and we need to look at what the consequences are of a deferral and what the consequences are of moving forward. Madam Chair, October 1st, we received a letter, and there are a couple of paragraphs that I think are important to mention. CBSA said that any delays at this point will cause irreparable damage, will increase costs, about $20 million for a 6-month delay. And this will seriously threaten CBSA's ability to account for $40 billion a year in revenue for the Government of Canada. I also found in the letter that several information sessions had been offered to employees. So clearly a 6-month delay is not ideal. So why are we insisting on a delay? Another paragraph that I saw here is that 3 million employees received training. So 95% of trade agents, which are the main system users for CARM. And 650 training sessions in person and online have been organized for employees, and more than 180 regional trainers have been equipped with the skills to offer ongoing training to employees. And so what I've understood is that there has been several different types of training to prepare everyone. Madam Chair, we also received a letter from Magna, a very well-known company. Unfortunately, I only have this letter in English. But in the letter, they state the following.
To move forward with this initiative and avoid further delays, Magda has invested considerable resources into preparing for the transition to CARM. Alors on voit et on sait qu'il y a plusieurs entreprises.
So we can see and we know that small and larger companies are ready and have invested what was necessary into this. September 30th, 2024, another letter.
CARM erode confidence and make it difficult to plan effectively. Implementing the system now will provide the certainty needed to move forward rather than extending the period of unpredictability. Alors, en regardant cette
So looking at this information, and I'd like to speak much further to this if I could, but I would like to ask this question again to Ms. Lipton from Deloitte. So speaking of the delays, what are the effects on the small and medium enterprises that are ready? Have you thought about this question? Also, and I'll let you answer this question first before I ask the next one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I think it's partly what you mentioned that's in some of those letters, right? It is the uncertainty and the inability for them to plan when many have said that they are ready and unable to have a solid plan as to when they can actually plan to turn on their system and move forward with the solution.
Alors, ma dernière question.
So my last question. This morning, the system that you mentioned, that's 37 years old, imagine if it was broken down, an outage. And so they were notified that there's an outage. What would we do if the current system cannot move forward because we're already finding that there are outages? And one example is what happened this morning.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I think that's exactly the point. I think CBSA, and I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I think they have been quite clear in their comments throughout this program that the need for CARM is because of the aging solution that they currently have, the aging technology that they currently have. And my understanding was the system this morning did go down around 9 a.m. And I don't believe, or I'm not exactly sure when I started this call, if the solution is even back at this point, which is, part of the reason why they were looking to replace the system with CARM.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Williams for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Ms. Campbell, I want you to reiterate the survey you sent around to your members this weekend or this week. What was that survey and what was the response you got?
The survey was very basic. It was would you support a delay request? And 80% said yes, 20% said no. Again, just hearing the conversation here, we understand that 20% are just tired and want to go. But they've also had the opportunity to prepare. So to answer your question shortly, that was the response.
So Ms. Upton from Deloitte, you're responsible for this. There's been testimony today. We've heard it the last few days on these testimonies that members aren't ready yet. So what does that say to you? What are you hearing?
So what I would say, and maybe kind of give you a bit of context here, the solution has been measured and thought out properly. It's been tested with over 7,000 test scenarios. As you would have heard from some of the other trade chain partners, there has been training. They have been involved in testing. As I said, in my 30 years of doing this, I understand that turning on a new solution, there's always trepidation. There's always some uncertainty. And there are always, organizations, people, employees who are going to feel that the solution is just simply not ready. And in some cases, it's important to move forward and then deal with potentially the issues that may arise as you go forward. We believe in this particular instance, the solution has been tested very thoroughly, and we are ready to support the solution once it is turned on and once it is live.
So Ms. Upton, but your stakeholders do not feel that way. You are the vendor being paid by the government to ensure that we have stakeholder readiness. We're hearing from these stakeholders that they are not ready. Why is Deloitte not ensured stakeholder readiness? Like, how many trading sessions do you had, and are you hearing from these industry people? Are you getting back to them? We're hearing delays. We're hearing big problems from the Deloitte side. So how do you answer to the fact that 80% of importers and exporters are saying they're not ready, and yet you're in charge of that?
So as I said, the solution itself has been tested. It has over 7,000 test scenarios that we've been through. We have, just to be sort of more direct in terms of where things stand, from a readiness perspective, much of that work is the work of CBSA. So training, change readiness, ensuring we've been supporting in that role, but a lot of that role has belonged to CBSA in terms of their.
So just to make that clear, Deloitte has no responsibility for that. That's CBSA's failing in terms of having importers and exporters saying they're not trained, they're not ready for this. This is CBSA, or is that Deloitte's responsibility?
We continue to support the CBSA through certification, through ensuring that our clients and their clients are certified, through the testing, through the various client experience simulation testings that have happened. We have supported them and made sure that the right clients have been included in the testing, have run the scenarios. We continue to support them through that certification process and ensuring that 99%, I think it's 99.6% of the trade volume is ready in terms of the clients that represent 99.6% of the trade volume. So we believe that the solution is ready and that we are ready to support once the system goes live on October 21st.
Well, what we're hearing again from stakeholders is they're not ready. They're not getting good communication. They're not getting emails returned. Sometimes we heard today that it's taking a few days to get those emails back. How does Deloitte respond to accusations of poor communication, and what specific steps are going to be taken to rectify this?
I think that's a question that's better posed to CBSA, who ultimately manages the communications with the trade chain partners for the most part. I would say again that there have been multiple touch points, multiple meetings. I know in conversations with CBSA and in some of the participation in meetings, there have been over 120 different one-on-one meetings with trade chain partners since we were last at committee to help prepare them, to help manage.
So just to clarify, you were
20 seconds.
You were completing those meetings, or was CBSA?
CBSA was leading, and we were supporting in those particular meetings.
Okay, so just for clarity, we have major problems with communication, which I think is why we have a motion to delay this. This is a major problem with communication. Deloitte's getting half a billion dollars to roll this out. You're saying the breakdown is with CBSA and Deloitte. Is that correct? Deloitte does not have responsibility for the 80% of importers and exporters who find that this system's not ready and they don't have good communication.
What I'm saying is that we feel that the solution is ready. We feel that the support processes are ready, and we will continue to be ready post the system go live.
Thank you. Mr. Sidhu, please. 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. Thanks, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask Ms. Miller, you had mentioned about the delegation of authority on this CARM portal, and that maybe UPS and FedEx, when someone registers, maybe they haven't given the delegation to certain companies. Can two companies be delegated? Because I know in the industry sometimes people will use, the courier companies for the courier shipments, and then they'll use an air cargo company for a different. Can two delegations be given?
Yes, there's no limit to the delegations, and there's levels of the delegation that you can provide as well.
And then coming back to the service standards, so we're hearing a couple hours, we're hearing a couple weeks, we're hearing a couple days. Maybe if we can get it in writing from the witnesses here in terms of some examples, whether it's orders and councils, whether it's an HS code error that we're getting back that it doesn't exist, whether it's a duties and taxes calculation from those that are testing the system. I think in writing would be helpful for us to kind of go through it, because we're hearing different things from different witnesses. Would you think a posted service standard would be helpful from CBSA in terms of, If it's these issues, we'll get it resolved within 48 hours. If it's something that's a little more complicated, would that be helpful if I can hear from the witnesses here today?
We look for your support in that. We've been asking that for a very, very long time.
I myself, as you guys know, I'm a big supporter of going live. I think that we cannot ignore not just the financial implication to CBSA, but also to me as a stakeholder, as a business who has over $150,000 invested. So that 1 or 2 days, the question would be, my first question has to go to the service provider. So if I have a problem with calculation of duties and taxes, the question is not to CBSA. The first question is to our service provider to find out if there's a problem in the software that has been developed that goes between CBSA.
I have to correct you there, Ms. Miller.
Yes,
The
sir.
question goes to CBSA. CBSA would then interact with Deloitte, the service provider. We wouldn't be able to do that. But yes, the question could go directly to them, but the agreement's between CBSA and Deloitte, right? And I think that's
If I can
important
correct
to know.
you, that's actually not correct on a broker side. So this is an association who, as a broker, we communicate with CBSA through service providers. Those service providers have been provided an ECCRD that has been given to like a Descartes and Candata, for example. As a broker, we use those service providers. So if there's issues with the technological aspect, it is to those service providers who would then communicate with CBSA.
To Deloitte, you would go to the service provider, and then the service provider would then go to Deloitte or through CBSA through the agreement. That's to my understanding from my
Yes.
meetings with CBSA.
Yeah, we would, as a broker and as an importer, because we are both, and as well as a software, we have Tariff Hippo, which is a software, we would not have any direct communication at all with Deloitte. In fact, if we have a problem with our carrier, for lack of a better word, if it's Candata, who may be, we would expect them to communicate with the TCCU of CBSA, which is split out between CARM and that. So it would be two different areas.
For us parliamentarians, we would probably traditionally go to CBSA and say, what's going on here? And then CBSA, I'm speaking from my role here in Parliament, and even from your role, you would go to the service provider who would then go to possibly to Deloitte or CBSA. But coming back to it, we know the cost, as my colleague asked here, the cost is roughly $30 million to delay this by a few months. And that's a lot of money on the public purse that we heard today Deloitte speak about, and I think CBSA has also mentioned. And so I think it's important for committee members and those watching that there's a cost to delaying this as well of $30 million. We heard from many of the witnesses here that, some members have apprehensions of not being ready, and some members are ready. And so how do we, bridge that gap? Is it the service standards? Is it, enabling more companies to set up faster? Or like UPS said, there's only, I think Ms. Bilodeau, you said 50% of your clients are on board?
Only 20% of ours, less than 50% in the
How much time do I
express
have left?
carrier industry.
I'm done. Okay. Well, you have 24 seconds left. Maybe I can come back to this, but Ms. Bilodeau, I wanted to kind of ask you, what would be helpful in terms of onboarding more clients? Because some stakeholders are saying they're ready to go. We're hearing from you that a lot of your import clients may not be ready to go. What's the difference there, and how can maybe CBSA help onboard new clients? And I'll probably come back to that in my next round.
Who were you?
In terms of,
Yeah.
I'm
Please
sorry, did you want me to answer
yes.
now, or we're
No,
coming
no,
back?
please go ahead. We need the answer, please.
Okay. In terms of what would help onboarding is, I guess, an increased outreach. I know that we've talked about not only small importers, but non-resident importers being an area of concern. And there's been recent webinar with CBSA for non-resident importers, but that was only within the last, I think, 2 weeks. So one webinar with an outreach to such a broad base of customers that are global is very problematic. And that's definitely an area that we would appreciate more support to onboard that particular area of customers.
Thank you very much. Mr. Savard-Tremblay for 2.5 minutes, please.
Oui, merci. Alors,
Yes, thank you. So I was listening, and there's some things that I think need to be made more clear. It's been stated, Ms. Sider, Ms. Campbell, that you're in favor of this system, that you're not against modernizing the system. But could you expand upon your perspectives on this?
Candace, and I know you'll jump in. Of course, we've been at this table since 2010 working on this. I think it's really important to also consider, as you're trying to make an informed decision here, I reflected upon what's happened over the last 10 years, and in between this period of time, we've actually implemented single window, which was managed by Canada Customs, amazing team. We put it in without fanfare. Quietly, it cost us $30 million, all contained within CBSA within this period of time. We've also put in an export system. Again, amazing team at CBSA within the IT group, less than $8 million. We work together. Is it perfect? No. We'd like some changes. We can't get any yet because we're all working on CARM. But proof that industry is wanting to modernize and will work with CBSA to move us all forward. Hopefully that will help.
Oui, non, bien. Je pense que c'est important de.
Yes, I think it's important to state that you're not against the concept of modernizing. We all agree on this. Ms. Sider, in your statement to the committee, you said that you're skeptical in terms of the calculation errors that were corrected by CBSA. Can you speak to this, please?
Yes, we're still seeing some calculation errors even as of last week, in terms of some of the duty deferrals, the excise tax tables, that when we were transmitting down the customs accounting declaration, what we received back is there's absolutely no calculation in excise tax. So for a system that is supposed to ensure the proper allocation of duties and taxes, we do have some concerns. So obviously they're not working as intended. And I think that goes back to what, Mr. Gallivan in his testimony said, out of 2,000 transactions that they did, and again, 2,000 transactions out of thousands of transactions that are actually transmitted on a daily basis to CBSA and processed. What's that algorithm? But the math is correct, but the interpretation of the legislation and the regulation raises a lot of red flags and concerns. And I think that's what we see historically, is that when a question is raised, it goes back to CBSA and it goes back to Team CARM, and oftentimes it has to go back to the program area. And the program area, that's where we're finding that there's a disconnect between policy and program and operational support.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Cannings for 2.5 minutes, please.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to turn to Ms. Campbell, and we've had a 6-month delay on this already. We've heard some testimony here that some people don't like the rigidness of all this, the Big Bang part. How people don't have the option of maybe waiting a little longer to join in. I guess I'm really struggling here to figure out what are we going to gain by waiting another 6 months when it seems that there's some structural disagreements. We hear that CBSA hasn't had good communications. Personally, I'm kind of doubtful that's going to change in 6 months if it's a problem now. So I'm just wondering, we've heard that this is going to cost Canada and a lot of companies money if we delay. I'm just trying to figure out what is the real benefit of another 6-month delay.
It's a very difficult position we're all in, actually, not only us as industry, but you as people trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. So I totally appreciate that. And you're right, it might not make a difference if we don't do anything different. That's why, again, we continue to advocate for the third party. We just really need somebody in there that can look objectively at everything, create the framework for it. So for us, I agree, if we just do 6 months and think something is going to different, I don't think it will, unless we do something different. And that's one of the things we recommend. The other thing is, too, though, even if we do go, we're very worried that what happens if we're right? Now what? Now we're going to be struggling around trying to figure it all out. And I totally understand the perspective of we don't want to spend, there's obviously a money implication here. But the things we just talked about with the ironic part of it, industry is actually fighting more to say, you're not collecting the money right when we go live. We know there's issues around what Candace just said, excise tax, surtax, all these additional things we don't think is calculating. We still don't even know what to do. But we also haven't even talked about the provincial sales tax, which I know my colleague on the phone from FedEx is a passionate person on this topic. Today we remit and collect the duties, and we remit on behalf of our clients. CBSA came up to us 2 weeks ago and said, no, all these importers are going to have to self-remit, which is an impossible situation, and they don't even know. And Ms. Jean-Bear, I'm sure you can give the number. I think we're looking at $250 million potentially off the table in terms of not money collected, just on that issue alone. And so that's for us. That's why we talk about most of the topics we're talking about. We're fighting to say we're worried you're going to lose revenue. So this is why we're still continuing to caution and raise the red flag, because we're worried about what's going to be left on the table because of all these things we're still seeing and aren't being corrected.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Cannings. Mr. Baldinelli or Mr. Williams?
Thank you. Both to Ms. Campbell or Ms. Sider. I know we talked earlier about a letter we received from Mr. Gullivan. We have received a letter today from Mr. Mark Weber, who's the National President of the Customs and Immigration Union. He stated today that that we received from our members regarding CARM, and despite Mr. Gullivan's claims, it's clear that CBSA personnel have not been provided with the level of training necessary to ensure a headache-free implementation of the platform. In fact, during the CIU National Board of Directors meeting that took place this last week, the overall sentiment towards CARM's launch continued to be one of apprehension, with a sense that commercial operations should be overwhelmed. Does that give more assertion that this is just a system that's not ready to go live?
Well, in my opinion, yes. I think in my statement that I submitted to the committee last week, I was very interested to hear Mr. Weber's perspective because maybe we were missing some of the information, and obviously we were very alarmed to hear what he had to say, because it certainly is what our members are hearing as we talk to CBSA officers. They're reporting that. I put that in my statement, and to have him actually validate that was very alarming.
So you heard my testimony with Ms. Upton and saying that Deloitte's not responsible for the training, so the CBSA. Now we're hearing the CBSA officers haven't been trained. So what's happening with the training? Because your members are the ones saying they're not getting this, the training wasn't offered. So maybe just give us a little more insight on what's happened with the training aspect of this.
Well, I can certainly obviously refer to my colleagues. I think from us, what we're feeling, there's 100% been training. They do webinars, they're online, you can take a look at them, but they're very fixated on getting people onto the portal. So all the pieces we're talking about, that is not in the training. And this is the pieces that are still a big disconnect for us. And again, a lot of the questions we have in terms of policy interpretations, what Ms. Sider's talking about, things that's going to happen in the border, we're still waiting to hear. I was very leaned in to listen to hear what Ms. Upton said, because we're still waiting to hear what is the transition plan. We were called on to a meeting on Friday. We were given some information about the cutover period that's starting tomorrow. But we were also told they were not going to talk to us about the transition plan. They would have a subsequent meeting on that sometime the week of October 14th. Having put in a system in the government myself, I'm shocked to hear that we're not talking about what happens if it doesn't work the way we want it to do. Typically, there's always obviously an issue around cutover. We would have worked with our importer community to be in this position on this project. I find quite shocking that we don't have a transition
Well,
plan.
let's get that now, Ms. Upton. Maybe publicly you hear the concerns here. So what is the answer for the transition plan, and what's going to happen?
There has been, and thank you for that question. There has been a transition plan in place. It is, as I said, I think earlier, a 2,000 plus line plan. I think the other important part to that plan is that we have rehearsed the cutover of this solution over 7 times now successfully. We also successfully launched it internally in May of this year. And so there's no reason to believe that we would not have a successful launch on October 21st. Seven times doing the cutover, 7 times doing 6.7 billion records and data migration, and bringing up the system and successfully launching it internally in May of 2024.
And I know, Ms. Upton, you're saying this to the committee and to the to Parliament here, but it's the stakeholders that we're hearing who don't have that same satisfaction. They're not convinced that you've done that. So again, I'll ask again, what can be done from Deloitte and from CBSA to further ensure these members that so that they feel that they're confident this is going to go through, not just yourself saying that it's going to happen.
Madam Chair, through you, I think the important part here is the fact that it continues to be a conversation that CBSA is having with the trade chain partners. As you heard Ms. Campbell just say, there is another meeting scheduled to talk about the remainder of the transition plan. But on the CARM side, there is a detailed line-by-line, minute-by-minute transition plan to get us to a successful cutover. And then there's a plan for support once the system is up and live of continuing to support the solution after October 21st.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Fortier, please, for 5 minutes. Ms.
Thank
Fortier
you.
is down as our last speaker and the end of round 3, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, thank you all for being here today. I think we all agree that modernization of the system is important. The delay is the problem. Do we delay or not? And the impacts of delaying and the impacts of pursuing, I believe, is the question that we're arguing today. I understand that we've heard those that are not ready, but I really want to bring forward those that are ready. And again, the letter I was quoting from the last time I spoke that was sent to the chair from Magna September 30th. Another important quote I'd like to share from the business that believes we should be going forward. It says, every additional delay risks eroding the progress, and the costs associated with maintaining readiness will continue to rise unnecessarily. We recognize that the transition will bring challenges, as all major changes do. However, these challenges can be addressed as they arise rather than avoided through indefinite postponements. Importantly, CARM does not affect the release of goods at the border, meaning any post-launch issues will primarily occur within the portal, which can be resolved without significant disruption to trade. I found that important to share with members of the committee and also Canadians that are listening. For those businesses that are ready, that have invested small or large amounts to get on the fact that they're ready, can you, Madam Lipton, maybe continue and share what are the risks of delaying for those businesses that are ready, small or large?
I think, as I may have alluded to earlier, the risk is continuing with the uncertainty. They're never quite sure when they need to be ready. They've invested a lot in their technologies themselves and have said to us that they're ready to turn this on and want to use the benefits of CARM. As you know, has been mentioned several times, this is a modernization of the data and the ability for Canada to compete globally and having access to that data. And having that information, putting the portal in the hands of the trade chain partners, you know, the big and small, I think is very important. So continuing to not go forward when they are telling us they're ready, they need this, they want this, I think continue to pose
Excuse me, Ms.
challenge.
Upton, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you bring down bring that down a little bit further, please, and maybe just speak a little bit louder into it, please?
Okay, is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes.
A bit better?
Okay, I think it's a bit better, yes.
Thank you. And then you were saying earlier when my colleague was asking about a transition plan, can you share a little bit more about that transition plan? I understand it is ready. And are there any, risks or any updates that you want to share with the committee members about that transition plan?
Yeah, the transition plan itself, or we refer to it as well as the cutover plan, which is the detailed line by line, item by item activity by activity that needs to happen. And it's everything from extracting data from one system and loading it into the new system, validation of data, minute by minute transition plan. It's ready. And I think even more importantly is we have rehearsed it and have successfully used it 7 different times. And in addition to the 7 different times, we've also used it to launch internally the solution now, the CARM solution that CBSA has been using as a verification tool for the last, since May of this year.
And on the record, you would probably recommend to move forward than delaying at this time. I just want to, as Deloitte is part of this, contract with the government, that would be your recommendation?
We would say that the solution is ready, and further delaying the solution would continue to cause challenges both with the trade chain partners that are ready, as well as just, the moving forward, we believe is the right thing to do at this stage.
Thank you. Merci.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, for the information of the committee, we have completed a full 3 rounds. We have a couple of motions to deal with. So is it the direction of the committee that we dismiss our witnesses and we focus our concentration on these motions? Everybody's good with that? Okay. Thank you to our witness for your very valuable time and information. To those online and those in the room, thank you again. We look forward to moving forward with completion of our study. So thank you all very much. I will suspend for a couple of minutes.
voilà maintenant comme...
Please.
En fait, tout simplement, on a reçu la semaine dernière donc la motion.
Last week, we received our Conservative colleagues' motion. I have added a couple amendments. So I added the independent third party, as was requested by importers and exporters, that we receive documents before the go-live, and that the committee present this motion to the House. I don't know if my colleagues who suggested the motion accept this.
Madam Chair.
Can we get printed? Did you? I didn't get one. Sorry. Speaking, like we heard from the witnesses today, and we know that there's financial implications of waiting another 6 months, as we heard. It's, the cost of $20 million to the public purse, not including that the missed revenues that could be collected using this new government system. And so I think as committee members, we need to take that into account. We also heard from the witnesses saying, well, if we have to be ready, we'll be ready. We also heard that we need to help bridge some of the gap in terms of importers signing up for this program, and I think that could be more work that we need to do with outreach to some of these importers and with the stakeholders that we have here today. But bringing in a third party, I think, wouldn't that add to more costs to this important CARM program? I'd like to hear from members on that, because I don't think this would be beneficial, bringing in a third party when we know where we have to get to, and we're pretty much almost there. But I wouldn't. This doesn't make sense to me. I'm just really wondering if the member opposite can speak to what would a third party help with, maybe in terms of the questions that you have today, from what we heard from witnesses today.
La justification était...
Well, I think it has been well explained by importers, exporters, and the submissions that we have received. We've also seen that with the past delay, there was maybe some improvement, but there were a lot of failures too, and so I don't trust CBSA to do this. And I think we've already heard a lot of arguments on this, so I suggest that we take a vote now.
I'm sorry, I've got other questions here. I've got Ms. Fortier, Mr. Chandra Arya. Go ahead, Ms. Fortier.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Écoutez,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can see that we are facing a very important discussion with this motion. What bothers me a bit is seeing that we're going to have another third party. I know my colleague already began to speak of this. How do we define an independent third party in this case? Third party that will be the provider to provide solutions for things. We already have a third party, Deloitte, that mentioned in their statement that they have already tested the system 7 times and they have a contingency plan. So I don't know how this would really help anything to have another third party. And what amount of time would it take us to choose a third party once we define what this third party will be, what will be the timeline, what will be the cost for choosing this group that will play this role? And so I do not agree with moving forward in finding an independent third party. I think that we have what we need here already, and I think that we already have our transitional plan, and I think that we have what we need to resolve the issues.
Mr. Chandra Arya.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once in my life, I was involved in the development of industrial project, having set up my own. And I've been involved in financing of many industrial projects, though they're all small-scale industries in other countries. One of the best ways to kill any project at this late advanced stage is to bring in a third party. Any project any project, however small, however big, is a complex thing. You cannot define a project to its minute part. It is not possible. Anybody can give me any project. In fact, when I was in a financial institution evaluating projects for financing, I could take a project and say that, hey, you want to fund this project? Tell me. Then I can find 10 arguments why we have to fund this project. Or, without reading it, you want to not fund this project? Then I can prepare 10 points why we should not fund it. So if you want to kill a project, especially a sensitive project, a big project, an important project, if the intention is to kill the project, is the time you have to bring in a third party. Any third party, it has to be a private sector company. A third party can come, they can put on the glasses and view the project. If the glasses they put on is to find the deficiency, they can find 100 deficiencies. Any complex project will have it. The project implementation period, that's what we used to call in the manufacturing project. The project is set up, and then it comes to commercial production. In between, you used to call a typical manufacturing project 18 to 24 months of implementation period, because the projects are always complex. And if you bring in any party now, if the party decides, I want to kill this project, delay this project, they can come with 100 pages report why we should not implement this project. At the same time, we can also get consultants. If they want to push this project, they can come and give 100 reasons why we should go ahead with this. If the intention is to unnecessarily delay, we have heard the witnesses. I did not ask any questions, but I have heard the witnesses second time today, both from the user's point of view, from the people who developed it. And I understand the projects are never perfect unless we start actually using it, implementing it. And Madam Chair, this suggestion of bringing a third party at this stage, in my view, is the only intention is to kill the project. That's it. There's no other way I can put this. Because no project, a complex project, my experience was in manufacturing projects, but any project is always a complex entity. It is almost a living organism. It will have some defects, like no perfect human body is perfect. We all have defects at different parts of the thing, but we'll all settle down after some time and come to a routine. So I fully oppose this particular proposal.
Very much. I have Mr. Cannings, then Mr. Baldinelli, and then Mr. Sidhu again. Mr. Cannings?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. I mainly want to talk to the main motion, not so much the amendment that Monsieur Savard-Tremblay has brought in. I have some concerns with the idea of a third party in the sense that it would require some development of a mandate of that third party. I don't know how long that would take. I mean, if this was at the start of a project, that might take a considerable amount of time, and it seems that we have like 3 days or something. But what I guess I just want to say overall, I've really struggled with this whole study myself. We've been, I think, kind of rushed both times in terms of taking all this in, getting rather opposing viewpoints from both sides, naturally. And I came in here thinking that I was going to support a delay, but by the end of this meeting today, I really haven't been convinced that a delay would accomplish anything. At least I haven't seen any concrete evidence that we desperately need a delay to do X, Y, and Z. It seems that most of the concern is from 80% of clients that aren't really feeling great about this. They just don't know what's going to happen. But I haven't heard what 6 months is going to fix in that. You know, we've heard CBSA has communications problems. Well, maybe that's a structural way of how CBSA works, and it's going to take longer than 6 months to fix that. So, and we've heard that it's going to cost businesses money. It's going to cost the government money, presumably. So, you know, I'm just saying that I think I would be voting against this motion to ask for a delay. Monsieur Savard Tremblay's concerns are, I think, kind of separate to that, but I will just leave it there.
Very much. Mr. Baldinelli, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for my colleagues' indulgence in considering the motion. I'm going to talk to the motion overall. I mean, the government has already talked, and some of my colleagues have mentioned about the cost of not proceeding. Well, this is not the first time CARM has been delayed. In fact, it was delayed just last spring. And what was the cost of that? And what did we find out from that? Nothing's changed from the time that we were examining this back in the spring. We've still got numerous concerns from stakeholders that this portal, that this project is not ready. I mean, my colleague talks about Magna and they're writing in support. Well, of course Magna would be in support. They're one of the 44 testers. They've been working on it for 3 years. They've got a competitive advantage to it. They've been working on the system. So when we look at the importers and exporters, the Canadian Association of Importers and Exporters, they do a survey of their membership. And their membership says 80% of us are saying, no, we're not ready. There's only 20% that are ready. We've received a letter from CFIB. Only 48% of their members are registered for this. And they represent 97,000 small and medium-sized businesses across this country. They're saying they're not ready. I mean, we've heard testimony from the testers that are doing the work. They're submitting tickets, and the government is yet to respond to numerous of those tickets. So how are they going to be able to implement it with hundreds of thousands of tickets that are coming in? And they had 6-month delay already, and they've still yet to answer the questions to the stakeholders to satisfy their arguments. Ultimately, we're going to vote. Again, going back to my colleague, again, Magna, they must be one of the testers. They're fine with it. But then we receive a letter from the global automakers of Canada. They represent Honda, Hyundai, Jaguar, Mercedes, Maserati, Mercedes-Benz, Mitsubishi, right? Toyota, Volkswagen, 26 brands. And they say Canada's automakers continue to have significant concerns about CBSA's capacity to effectively implement the CARM system, despite its plans to transition to this new system on October 4th, 2024. Ultimately, we're going to vote on this motion. But what is the cost of proceeding? And this fails. I mean, this is the government that has given us a RiveCan, $60 million blunder, and I can tell all of my colleagues what that did to my border community in terms of tourism, right? And the Phoenix Pay system, which is, there's still employees that are having difficulties with the Phoenix Pay system that should never have proceeded. If anything should have taught us that there should have been a parallel system in place before proceeding, it would have been the Phoenix Pay system. And that has been a huge disaster. Ultimately, we're going to vote here, but if this fails, it's on CBSA, it's on Deloitte, and it's on this government. I'm ready to vote, Madam Chair.
All right, we're ready to call a vote? Okay. Okay, we'll have a recorded vote, Grant. Sure. And so how do you know how to do this? Yeah, I can figure it out.
So just make clear that we're voting on the amendment.
Well,
all right, thank you for your patience. So the vote is on the amendment of Monsieur Saval-Tremblay, whether to in support or not. Mr. Arya? Ms. Fortier?
No.
Mr. Sidhu?
No.
Mr. Sheehan? Mr. Souza?
No.
Mr. Baldinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Martel?
Yes.
Mr. Genereux?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Oui.
Monsieur Saval-Tremblay?
Oui.
Mr. Cannings?
So this is on the amendment? Oh, yes.
The amendment proposed by Mr. Savard Tremblay, right? That was to do the third party.
And then the committee will report back to the House.
Now the main motion.
Yes, now we go to the main motion. Okay, so Mr. Savard Tremblay's amendment passed, and that's amending Mr. Baldinelli's motion. Okay.
All right, so the vote on the main motion. Mr. Arya?
No.
Madame Fortier?
No.
Mr. Sidhu?
No.
Mr. Sheehan?
No.
Mr. Souza?
No.
Mr. Baldinelli?
In support?
Mr. Genereux?
Yes.
Monsieur Martel?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Monsieur Saval-Tremblay?
Oui.
Mr. Cannings?
No.
So the motion fails.
Yeah, 6 to 5.
Okay, so the motion does not carry. Mr.
souhaite
Savard
soumettre une
Tremblay,
autre
you have
motion.
another motion you want?
Can I table another motion? Yes. It will be emailed to you. I will read it. The interpreter does not have the motion. The committee adopted the motion to produce in both official languages an unredacted document pertaining to the implementation of CARM. The deadline for receiving these documents was not respected. The committee does not have all the necessary information to do its study with all it needs to know. Unanimous motion has been passed, indicated that CBSA did not receive all the requested information. The committee tabled a report on this. October 2024, documents have still not been given to the committee. CBSA has stated this itself in a document produced in October 2024. So not all documents have been received. The committee considers that it is in its rights to request that the House take the necessary measures. It requests that the chair report this to the House.
Do you have your motion in English and French, Mr.
Absolument.
Savard Tremblay? Can you distribute it or send it? It was quite a lengthy motion, and I think it's very difficult to be able to absorb all of that.
C'est pourquoi on a les versions écrites dans les.
This is why the written version is in both languages.
Do we have a written version?
Written in French, the clerk has it. English, I just sent it by email, so we can.
Madam Chair, can we suspend while we?
Okay, we will suspend for a moment, okay? appreciate the motion, and I know your staff sent it by email, but if we can all remember, whenever we're going to do a motion that's more than 3 lines, please print it out in English and French so that everybody has it, right? This is a fairly lengthy motion, and I think needs time for everybody to absorb it and debate it. So I'm going to suggest, given the fact that it's 6:25, Mr. Savard-Timberley, would you agree to, you've tabled it, and you've said you want to debate it. Can we do this on Monday?
Je suis d'accord, mais je souhaite.
I would agree with that, but I would ask that we don't adjourn. We suspend the meeting until our next meeting so that this does not die, essentially.
You put it on as an order of business, and you have the floor. And I would give you back the floor at the beginning of the business portion of the meeting on Monday.
Parfait. Et je vous fais mes excuses pour la.
Great, and I apologize to have not have distributed the paper copies.
Thank you very much.
On fera attention la prochaine fois.
I'll watch out for that next time. I don't want to do that which we're criticizing, promising to offer documents and not doing so.
I move adjournment.